Oh, what an inspiring sound and what an inspiring look. Cones, drilling, digging, and little green barriers that presumably mean we'll come back to this later and please don't go in because we've dug something up. It's like a work in progress, you know, it's like they're building the empire again. It feels great. Either that, or it's just a complete cluster F of roadworks throughout the entire capital. I can't quite decide. Now, if that sounded overly cynical, by the way, it's because I'm going according to my my plan that I made for this film, which says, stand in Parliament Square and be cynical. That is the plan for this section of the film. Specifically, be cynical about Europe. So here we go. Did you hear that music at the beginning of the film, by the way? That was Ode to Joy by Beethoven, which is the European national anthem, or European anthem, sorry. I don't want to yet call it an actual nation, because that would be getting ahead of themselves, seeing as the project is sort of going a little bit astray. I don't know if you've noticed, but the European project is going a little bit astray. I know. Quite ironic, really, that Beethoven's Ode to Joy is the European anthem, or maybe it's apt, because Beethoven wrote that just at the time when he'd gone completely abjectly deaf, and essentially the Ode to Joy is essentially him making a sort of celebration for a concept called hearing of beautiful music, when in actual fact it was a physical impossibility. It's sort of like a celebration of something that he will never know. It's a celebration of the impossible, and that is the European national anthem. Now, of course, I'm here outside, the mother of democracy, apparently. There's a protest down outside Downing Street at the moment from people from, it's like some kind of National African Day, Democracy in Africa Day, and so there's lots of people from various democratic states in Africa protesting at Downing Street with the British Prime Minister. I mean, we're obviously, whenever I want to get something done in politics in England, I normally go to Senegal to protest. But, can you hear that noise? That is the sound of progress and the sound of empire building. Now, a lot of people have asked me over the last few weeks, and I'm sure it's happened to you as well, people have said, oh, how are you going to vote in the European referendum on June the 23rd, 2016? And, it's the time where people can pretend that, democracy is real. It kind of reinforces it upon them. That's why there's this big golden building as well. It sort of reinforces the imaginary idea that democracy actually exists. And, on June the 23rd, it'll be a celebration. People can go happy, clappy. Sorry, am I being cynical enough, by the way? Can go happy, clappy, arm in arm, skipping down, because they're either going to vote in, and they're going to politically align themselves with David Cameron, who went to Eton School and Oxford University and was in the Bullingdon Club, or they're going to skip together hand in hand, maybe ride their Boris bikes down to vote out and align themselves with Boris Johnson, who of course went to Eton and then to Oxford and was in the Bullingdon Club. A very similar pathway to people like Cecil Rhodes, who's very much into empire and that sort of thing, and somebody called Nathan Rothschild, who went to Eton and to Oxford and was in the Bullingdon Club. But then so was David Dimbleby. So I think I've been fittingly cynical about it. Of course, when people ask me how are you going to vote on June the 23rd, I of course always say I'm not going to vote. Why would I vote? Why would I either politically align myself with George Osborne or Ian Duncan Smith? Why would I agree for globalisation through the route of the EU, or globalisation through the route of a larger empire including Australia and Britain and America and Britain? what is the point in voting for globalization, no matter which way it goes? But earlier I thought to myself, to really work out what's going on, we need to go to the place where, the real changes will happen. So earlier on, I went to the City of London to see if I could work out anything about trade. There are dragons back there at the beginning of London Bridge, a potent reminder that the City of London has always been very, very fond of barriers, trade barriers. Once a year they do a curious ceremony on this bridge, which leads all the way into the city towards the big golden owl. And the strange ceremony they do is where a freeman of the City of London is allowed to drive sheep over London Bridge. And this is a very, very potent reminder that trade has always had restrictions on it, but only if you become a freeman of the City of London, then symbolically you can drive a sheep without having to pay a levy. So it's only really the select few that have the rare experience of not having to pay any kind of levy or excise duty or anything like that upon trading with the city. Of course, a lot of people come down here to have a good look at that fantastical mechanical bridge off in the distance, and they take lots and lots of pictures of it, and they buy postcards of it, and they love it, and it's apparently the most famous bridge in the world. Curiously, it is insured as a ship. I don't really know what that... I've never really understood why, but that bridge down there apparently is not actually a bridge, but it is a ship. But essentially it was constructed to create a barrier for trade. It is a gate, it's a security gate to enforce taxation and prevent free trade. And free trade in that context, of course, is known as, you could call it piracy or smuggling, essentially bringing goods into the city without paying your dues, without paying your dues. Maybe that's a little bit too salient. Without paying, levies or customs. There's the old customs house down there. I'm not even sure if we can see it from here. We cannot see it. And so they built a gate, so you could only get in here with a ship if they lifted up for you, and you had to make sure that all of your bills were paid, and you paid your levies and your customs and all that kind of stuff. But of course, people come up here and they take lovely pictures of that bridge. They don't quite realise they're worshipping the very concept of expensive trade barriers. So it's a bit weird, really, isn't it? Of course, therefore, it's a bit odd that the City of London apparently and the Bank of England are so pro-EU, if they're so protectionist. Of course, the guilds are still alive in the City of London. They still have the medieval guild hall, and the system of guilds in the City of London was basically to restrict young, innovative men or boys turning into men that could take over business. It's a barrier to success. It's a restriction, and is therefore the opposite of freedom. So, a bit weird when the City of London, Bank of England, and people like that talk about, free trade being an important thing. It seems to be the antithesis of their very being. I don't know, let's go a bit further in to the Bank of England, see if we can work out what the hell's going on. just in case you didn't realise, and hopefully you can hear me, it doesn't sound too loud, that is the Bank of England, which is a really weird object. Although that's the sort of restructured, or rather more formal bank of the 1730s, the original one was set up in the 1690s, basically in opposition to Europe and to France in particular, because a man called King William III, William of Orange, had decided to declare war on France, because, you know, they rivaled the business model of England, and didn't do particularly well, lost a lot of boats. And so the Bank of England essentially was set up to monetize the debt of the king as he rebuilt the Royal Navy. So it was basically set up as a set of private investors basically holding the king to ransom, and therefore being able to tell the king kind of what to do, or rather advise him, or rather just be a custodian over the royal coffers. Coffers. So the Bank of England is a bit odd. I mean, you know, it was turned into a sort of public asset in the 1940s, but it's still basically a private entity. It is certainly not democratic. You can certainly tell that just by the very air of Dr. Mark Carney when he's dragged up in front of various committees or whatever. I think he has little fights with, you know, Thatcherite Tory people.
Financial stability. That's the first point. If I may, that's the first. If I may finish.
Well, I come back because I think you're answering to the wrong point. You also
I'm not sure I am, because you're asking.
Hold on just a minute.
The Bank of England is not a democratic institution. In fact, it's very much anti-democratic, as in its main job is to protect the city and act as a kind of middleman to protect the city against the influences of the public voice. It is similar in a lot of ways to the House of Lords. It's like a senior set of elders whose job it is to make sure that there's some kind of natural longevity to the way that things are supposed to work. It is basically set up to, you know, create stability in the market, and by stability what it means is no popular uprisings, like the peasants' rebellion, hence the symbol of the sword on the City of London flag, this sort of celebration of the victory of the city over the poorer common folk who were worried about how things were going on, whatever. You should try recording in this environment one day, you know, when people at bus stops just stare right at you while you're speaking. It's really awkward. Very awkward. So yeah, the Bank of England has made sure, on behalf of the city, that if the vote goes one way, the city is protected, and if the vote goes the other way, the city is protected. So if you vote, people are literally shouting through their windows at me while I'm recording. It doesn't matter whether you vote in or out, the city will be protected, and that is essentially the job of the Bank of England. A public institution, apparently. Love the red telephone boxes, you know. I've seen them queuing up at these red telephone boxes to have their photograph taken. I'm pretty sure they know full well that nobody uses them for the telephone. In fact, when people go in, you can see their faces suddenly change because they are hit with a very potent smell, which I don't know what's politely to call, other than piss. Pongs a little bit because people use them to go to the toilet. Who would have thought? I thought it was used for telephone, mate. No, look, the window's all smashed. People use it to go to the toilet. But it doesn't matter. Look, there's some now, look. But it doesn't matter, it's a symbol, you know, just like the Houses of Parliament. It's like, oh look, it's a building for democracy. But it doesn't really matter that nobody actually uses it. Democracy doesn't really happen inside there, everybody knows that. It did in the olden days. Now people just use it for pissing in. They just hang around there every day and have a nice lunch there and just... I think fairly everybody is aware that all of this is just symbolic of the olden days. Look, there's some more, look. There they are. Do you think they'll be voting on June the 23rd? I think they probably will. Of course, a month before the vote, the big vote, a month before the vote, is a thing called the purdah, which means the veil. So 4 weeks before, all the campaigning stops, and there's a sort of month of peace before people go and vote. Preceding the vote, of course, they're going to be having there's some kind of celebration about Shakespeare, like it's 400 years since he died. He died in 1616. And you know, he was sort of an imaginary being as well, and a state propagandist. So these next few months are just going to be, you know, beautifully, fantastically colourful, and designed for happy clappy people. It's going to be marvellous, you know. Now, let's just say I'm wrong. And you know, the vote, the in-out vote for the European referendum really is a symbol of real democracy in action, national democracy. And I'm wrong? Well, it shows really that democracy, in its functional way, is about backstabbing and alliance splitting, and it is about vicious propaganda being thrown from both sides. So that's healthy democracy, is it? Backstabbing each other and slurring each other in the newspapers, that's what democracy is about, and that's healthy. They say that if we vote out, look, they're going to be voting on the 23rd of June. Happy clappy. When they vote, if they vote out those people there, they vote out not just of the taxi but out of the European Union. They say that Goldman Sachs International is going to leave Britain. It sounds like such a terrible thing to happen to the country. I don't know how people could bear to vote out.